always heard of bad things happening to people, but I never thought anything bad would ever happen to me. Then all of a sudden, I was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes. I was in kindergarten.
Diabetes is like the big bully on the block, stealing my health instead of my lunch money and taking my life instead of my gym shoes.
I'm gonna tell Congress my life story. It won't be a first-hand experience, but they'll know, I think, a little better than they did before, hearing it from a kid.
Every day in this country, 35 children will get the news that they have diabetes and face a lifetime of daily insulin injections, dangerous, even deadly consequences.
Mary Tyler Moore is our guest, the international chairperson of the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation in Washington for our big Children's Congress this morning.
Well, the most exciting thing that is happening in this research is stem cell research. We are very close. What we need now is a massive amount of money for the National Institutes of Health, and that's what we're here for.
200 children are converging on Washington this week, hoping to raise awareness about what ails them. They are afflicted with type 1 diabetes. During the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation Children's Congress, delegates will head to Capitol Hill to try to persuade lawmakers to increase funding for research.
No one who was there will ever forget it. 200 children from every state in the Union asking for the help they need to save their own childhoods, speaking up for themselves and for countless others like them, fighting for the right of a child to be a child, becoming advocates for their own cure.
Hi, my name is Daniel Fowler. I'm 11 years old, live in North Carolina, and one of the millions of Americans who's been diagnosed with juvenile diabetes.
I'm Daniel's sister, Jessica. I'm 13 years old and have had diabetes for over 7 years. My sister Cameron was also supposed to be here, but unfortunately she's back at the hotel, sick. She is 9 years old and has had diabetes since she was 4. And we just want you to know that there are 3 in our family that suffer from diabetes.
Diabetes is a devastating disease which affects 16 million Americans, including over 600,000 people in my home state of Michigan. Today's hearing brings together children from around the country, some very well-known Americans with household names, and some of our top scientists to help put a human face on what it is like to live with diabetes.
I knew that I had to get involved, that I had to help lead the fight for more research so that we can prevent, ultimately, better treat, and eventually cure this disease.
It's difficult to educate people with this disease because you look at them and there's nothing wrong. You just can't see it. I mean, teachers, it's difficult for anybody to understand unless they've lived it. I'm going to relish this week with these kids.
I'm proud to be here to meet all of you, along with my friend Kevin Klein, who is also a good friend of all of us with diabetes. Kevin has been a great JDRF volunteer, and today he is here to ask that you promise to remember us.
Throughout our history, the marvelous men and women of medical science have discovered cures for what had seemed to be incurable diseases. Today, finally, the cure for diabetes is within their reach. It is within our reach. I urge you to do all that you can to speed along the necessary research for this cure, so that these brave, all too patient, heroic children can open their arms and embrace the long, healthy life which they deserve.
Thank you for letting me join my friend Tessa Wick and all 200 of the Children's Congress delegates today to talk about juvenile diabetes. Tessa and I are both 10 years old, and in a lot of ways we are very much alike. We both have big dreams for our futures. But Tessa happens to be different from me in one important way.
In January of 1999, a doctor told her she had juvenile diabetes, and a lot of things in her life would have to change just so she could stay alive.
2 years ago, when I first got diabetes, I was embarrassed and wanted to keep it a secret. But soon I realized that the only way to survive this disease is to be part of the cure. So my sisters and I tried to raise money, thinking that we would send it to JDRF and the scientists would find a cure. But then I learned that some politicians were trying to stop embryonic stem cell research, the kind of research that is our best chance for a cure. So please, ask yourself, is the life of one child with diabetes, like me, or any of the other kids here, less important than a cell the size of a dot? We're here because we're in trouble. It's hard to have diabetes, and we're scared to face the future.
When the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation launched the first Children's Congress in 1999, it proved to be an idea whose time had come. And the idea originated, appropriately, from a child. Today, the Children's Congress is one of the most effective tools we have. These kids write thousands of letters to their representatives. They pay visits to key members of Congress. They sing on the steps of their nation's capital. And the Children's Congress gets the attention it deserves.
An 11-year-old Houston girl is helping spearhead a national fight against juvenile diabetes.
17-year-old Jason Smith goes to Washington today. Nick Shapiro is your normal teen in every way but one.
And a whole bunch of kids from all over the country are going to Washington, D.C. 200 children, and they're going to try to petition Congress for more money for research for juvenile diabetes, because insulin is not a cure.
And in the fight against diabetes, actress Mary Tyler Moore was calling on Congress to support research. We want to tell you about Jackie and Molly Singer. They're twins, now 12 years old. Yesterday, the two girls were in Washington. They were there to lobby Congress for more funding.
On behalf of the NIDDK and the other institutes and centers of the National Institutes of Health, I hope I've been able to convey to this subcommittee and to the children in the room today that we have a vigorous research agenda to conquer diabetes and its complications. We are eager to pursue the many scientific opportunities made possible by the biotechnology revolution. We are inspired by the dedicated efforts of patients and their families, by organizations such as the JDRF, and by the Diabetes Caucus. It is a privilege for me to be able to share the vigor and promise of research in diabetes with this subcommittee and with the children and parents affected by diabetes, who are always on our minds and in our hearts.
There's a sense of urgency to everything we do. The research JDRF has supported has brought us to a point where we know we could have a cure. But there's more to be done to get there, and so many more research dollars to be raised. You see, for these kids, and all of us who have this disease, diabetes never takes a day off.
When my son called at the age of 26 to tell me that he had been diagnosed with juvenile diabetes, he began by saying, "Houston, we have a problem." Mr. Chairman, I know that our great nation can solve any problem if it puts its mind to it. Now, look at the children before you. I think you will agree that failure is not an option.
I spend my life on the issue of resource allocation. I would share with you that I do not know any place where you can get a better return on your investment than support for the kind of research work that goes on with and through the cooperation of the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation.
Eliza was born in 1996. All the things I dreamed of, I noticed. She has my husband's eyes. She has my smile and my personality. She's as stubborn as a bull. But the one thing I never dreamed of giving my child was diabetes. I ask myself often, isn't my diabetes enough? I have sacrificed 26 years of my life to this disease. Why does she have to sacrifice her life?
I'll never forget the day in January 2000 when my 11-year-old son, Andrew, informed me he had diabetes. That day in the hospital, I watched my son go from 11 to 18 in one day. Andrew manages his care himself. I'm proud of him. Some children and parents have it much worse. Like most parents, I want to do what's best for my children so they can dream their dreams and realize those dreams, making a valuable contribution to this great nation. We need your help. Please help us give all these children a fair chance. Please help me to live up to my promise to Andrew to help him find a cure.
I want to live to be a healthy adult with grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and children. My dream for the future is not to be the kid with diabetes, but to just be Andy Weber.
Nobody can tell the story better than young people who are burdened with this disease. And children themselves, obviously, you just want to love all of them. And their passion and their emotion and their motivation and their hope for the future all comes through.
While I was in the intensive care unit, my mother and I made a pact. Our pact was if I would do everything in my power to stay healthy, she would do everything in her power to find a cure. We have both remained true to our promises. Years from now, when my children ask me about my struggles with diabetes, I will tell them about this day, and I will say, I testified before the United States Congress in Washington, D.C., and I passionately urged the leaders of this great nation to fund the research to find a cure for diabetes. And I did that so that hundreds of thousands of kids like you, my child, would not have to.
I always thought that if I ever got complications, that I would be grown, that I would still have my youth to be normal. But diabetes has stolen my childhood and forced me to grow up. I worry about having a seizure, going blind, or losing my kidneys. The top 10 music countdown or the latest fashions at Gap. These things just don't seem that important in my life. Look around this room. There is no way for you to know how many of these children are already experiencing problems with their kidneys or their eyes. Because diabetes is silent. On the outside we look healthy. On the inside a war is raging in our bodies. A war we cannot fight alone.
Diabetes is an all-too-personal time bomb which can go off today, tomorrow, next year, or 10 years from now. A time bomb affecting millions like me and the children here today. This reality is made all too clear by the recent sudden death of a young friend, Danielle Alberti. Danielle was 31. She was an aspiring artist and the daughter of one of JDRF's most active and generous volunteer leaders. With her doctor's guidance, she and her mother decided to return home together to Australia, where her chances for a transplant were greater. But Danielle didn't survive the flight. She died at 30,000 feet, seeking comfort in her mother's arms. Her last words were, "Mom, hold me." Chairman Levin, Senator Collins, members, we're here again because of our children, our loved ones with diabetes. They look to us for comfort, for a way to stop their suffering, and we are determined to find it. Promise to remember me is more than a slogan. It's more than a theme song. It's a commitment to save children, to save childhoods. Please join us. This is a promise we can keep.
As the paths divide, as the gulf grows wide, we know that's the way it's got to be. But tell me you will not forget. Every now and then, while you're running free, promise to remember me.
I think the kids that are here at Children's Congress are much more courageous than any football opponent I've ever gone against.
I've played in front of some huge crowds in my career. I've been lucky enough to do that, but yesterday was one of the most special things I've ever done.
I want to be 4 things, but it only has to be 2 things because I want to be an astronaut, a rider, a gymnast, and a stunt person. But you can write in space and practice my gymnastics while I'm doing my stunts.
I've been in a lot of big games in my career, but I don't know of any that even start to match the magnitude of
helping find a cure for juvenile diabetes?
If they don't make a cure, I'm looking forward to being a doctor and trying fixing it myself.